Imagine buying something for $4 million. 2 years later, it's worth $70 million. You're a genius, right? The greatest investment in history. Now imagine watching that same thing drop to $7,500. Not $7 million, not $700,000, $7,500. A 99.9% collapse. This actually happened, and it happened to the most expensive racehorse ever sold. This is the story of Fusaichi Pegasus and the wildest financial disaster in sports history. Buckle up. Here's what makes this story absolutely insane. We're not talking about a bad investment that lost some money. We're talking about something that gained 1,750% in value in less than 2 years, then lost 99.6% of that value over the next 2 decades. Imagine if you bought Apple stock, watched it multiply 17 times, sold at the peak, and then watched the buyer lose almost everything. Except this wasn't stock. This was a living, breathing champion, a Kentucky Derby winner, a horse so magnificent that the world's most powerful breeding operation paid a record-shattering $70 million for him, and then watched helplessly as everything fell apart. This is about greed, genetics, bad luck, and the brutal truth that past performance never guarantees future results. Let's dive into the chaos. To understand how something can be worth $70 million one day and become essentially worthless years later, you need to understand the horse racing business. It's not like other sports. Athletes make money from playing. Racehorses make money from breeding. A champion racehorse can earn more money retired than racing simply by producing offspring. That's why breeding rights to a Kentucky Derby winner can be worth more than a private island. But here's the catch. Those offspring have to be good. They have to inherit the champion's talent. And when they don't, when genetics fail to transfer, when the babies are disappointing, the value collapses like a house of cards. That's exactly what happened to Fusaichi Pegasus. This is his financial autopsy. Chapter by chapter, dollar by dollar. Let's start at the beginning. July 1998. Keeneland Sales Pavilion in Lexington, Kentucky. The most prestigious horse auction in the world. Wealthy buyers from across the globe gather to bid on yearling thoroughbreds, hoping to find the next champion. Most yearlings sell for tens of thousands, maybe a few $100,000. The truly elite ones, those with perfect pedigrees and flawless conformation, might reach 1 or 2 million. On this particular day, a chestnut colt with exceptional bloodlines enters the ring. His father, Mr. Prospector, is one of the most influential sires in modern racing history. His mother, Angel Fever, comes from a family of champions. The colt himself looks like he's been sculpted by an artist. Powerful hindquarters, deep chest, intelligent eyes. Everything about him screams potential. The bidding starts and quickly escalates. 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. In the back of the pavilion, a Japanese businessman named Fusao Sekiguchi keeps raising his paddle. He's not intimidated by the price. He's built a tech empire worth hundreds of millions. $4 million is expensive, but not impossible. And he wants this horse badly. He wants to prove that a Japanese owner can compete with American racing royalty. He wants validation. He wants glory. When the auctioneer's hammer finally falls, Sekiguchi has paid $4 million. At the time, it's one of the highest prices ever paid for a yearling. Some observers think he's crazy. Others think he's visionary. The truth is, nobody knows yet. The colt hasn't run a single race. He's an unproven baby with a famous last name and a massive price tag. That's it. Sekiguchi names him Fusaichi Pegasus. Fusaichi combines his own name with the Japanese word for number 1. It's bold. It's arrogant. It's exactly the kind of statement an outsider makes when he's trying to break into an exclusive club. The American racing establishment raises their eyebrows.
This Japanese businessman just spent $4 million and named the horse after himself. Who does he think he is? But Sekiguchi doesn't care about their skepticism. He's made his bet. $4 million on a dream. Now comes the hard part, proving it was worth it. Training a racehorse is part science, part art, part prayer. Even horses with perfect pedigrees fail. Injuries happen. Temperament issues emerge. Sometimes the talent just doesn't translate from genetics to the racetrack. Sekiguchi hires Neil Drysdale, one of America's most respected trainers, to prepare Fusaichi Pegasus for racing. Drysdale quickly discovers this colt has serious talent, but he also has a personality. He's stubborn, curious, easily distracted. The kind of horse that tests your patience every single day. Through late 1999 and early 2000, Fusaichi Pegasus runs in several prep races, building toward the Kentucky Derby. He wins the Jerome Stakes. He wins the San Felipe Stakes. He wins the Wood Memorial. Each victory adds to his reputation. Racing analysts start calling him the Derby favorite. The media loves the story. Japanese outsider challenging American tradition. Sekiguchi's $4 million gamble is starting to look brilliant. Then comes May 6, 2000, the 126th Kentucky Derby. 150,000 people pack Churchill Downs. Millions more watch on television. 19 horses load into the starting gate. But everyone's watching one. Fusaichi Pegasus, the number 16 horse, carrying Japan's hopes and one businessman's obsession. The gates crash open. The race unfolds beautifully. Jockey Kent Desormeaux keeps Fusaichi Pegasus calm in the early chaos, tracking the leaders, waiting for the perfect moment. Into the final turn, Desormeaux asks his horse to run, and Fusaichi Pegasus explodes. He sweeps past every challenger like they're standing still. He crosses the finish line, 1.5 lengths clear of the field. A Japanese-owned horse has just won the Kentucky Derby for the first time in history. In that moment, everything changes. Fusaichi Pegasus isn't just a $4 million yearling anymore. He's a Kentucky Derby champion. And Kentucky Derby champions are worth astronomical sums because of breeding potential. Industry experts immediately start calculating his value. Conservative estimates say $40 million. Optimistic estimates say $80 million or more, especially if he wins the Triple Crown. Overnight, Sekiguchi's $4 million investment has increased in value by at least 1,000%, possibly 1,750% or higher. It's one of the greatest short-term investment returns in sports history. 2 years. 4 million to potentially 70 million or more. Sekiguchi looks like a genius. But here's the thing about genius. It's often just luck that hasn't run out yet. After the Derby, the phone calls start immediately. Breeding farms want Fusaichi Pegasus. Coolmore Stud, the most powerful breeding operation in the world, wants him badly. Based in Ireland with operations in Kentucky, Coolmore has built a multi-billion-dollar empire, buying champion racehorses and breeding them to produce the next generation of champions. They've made fortunes from this model. Previous Derby winners they've purchased have generated hundreds of millions in breeding revenue. They approach Sekiguchi with a proposition. They want to buy Fusaichi Pegasus. They want his breeding rights, and they're prepared to pay whatever it takes. The initial conversations are exploratory, but the numbers being discussed are staggering. 40 million, 50 million, maybe more. Sekiguchi listens but doesn't commit. He wants to see what happens in the Preakness Stakes, the second leg of the Triple Crown, 2 weeks away, May 20th, 2000, Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore, the Preakness Stakes. Fusaichi Pegasus enters as the overwhelming favorite. He's the hottest horse in America. Bettors make him odds-on, meaning you have to bet more than you can win because he's considered nearly unbeatable. The race should be a formality. Another victory, one step closer to the Triple Crown, one step closer to being worth $100 million or more. But racing has no guarantees. Down the stretch, a long shot named Red Bullet, a Canadian-owned colt that nobody expects to win, charges from the back of the pack. Fusaichi Pegasus fights hard, but Red Bullet is relentless. They hit the wire together, and Red Bullet wins by 3/4 of a length. Upset. The Triple Crown dream dies. The crowd is shocked. Sekiguchi is devastated. And Fusaichi Pegasus's value drops instantly. Some estimates say he loses $30 to $40 million in value in those 2 minutes. The breeding market is brutal. Triple Crown winners are worth exponentially more than horses who only won the Derby, but Coolmore still wants him. Even without the Triple Crown, a Derby winner is valuable. Within days of the Preakness loss, Coolmore makes their official offer, and it's a number that makes headlines around the world, $70 million. The highest price ever paid for a thoroughbred stallion in history. No horse has ever sold for more. Not Secretariat, not Seattle Slew, not any champion in racing's long history. $70 million for breeding rights to a horse who won the Derby, but lost the Preakness, and would never run in the Belmont Stakes due to an injury. Sekiguchi faces an impossible decision. His heart says, keep racing, chase glory, prove the Preakness was a fluke. But his head says take the money. $70 million is generational wealth. It's financial security. It's a 1,750% return on his $4 million investment in less than 2 years. It's the deal of a lifetime. After agonizing deliberation, he accepts. In June 2000, the sale is finalized. Fusaichi Pegasus officially belongs to Coolmore Stud for $70 million. The story makes international news. The most expensive horse in history. The Japanese businessman who turned $4 million into $70 million. It looks like everyone wins. But the celebration doesn't last long. Coolmore doesn't buy racehorses to put them in museums. They buy them to breed champions and make money. Lots of money. At $70 million, Fusaichi Pegasus needs to be extraordinarily successful as a breeding stallion to justify the investment. The math is straightforward. If they charge $200,000 per breeding and breed him to 100 mares per year, that's $20 million in annual revenue. Over 10 years, that's $200 million. Over 20 years, $400 million. Minus expenses, they could potentially triple or quadruple their investment. That's how breeding champions works, when it works. Coolmore sets his initial stud fee at $200,000 per live foal. That means mare owners pay $200,000 if the resulting baby is born alive. It's an expensive fee, but for a Derby winner, it's within market range. Top stallions charge between $150,000 and $500,000. Fusaichi Pegasus slots in at the upper middle tier. Coolmore books him to elite mares, meaning expensive female horses with excellent bloodlines. The goal is simple. Produce future Derby winners. Produce champions. Produce horses that validate the $70 million price tag. His first foals are born in 2002 and 2003. Breeders and racing fans watch eagerly. Will these babies inherit their father's Derby-winning talent? Will they have his speed, his acceleration, his competitive fire? The babies are beautiful. Strong, well-built, they look like champions. But as they grow and begin training, a pattern emerges. A troubling pattern. Many of the foals inherit their father's difficult temperament. They're stubborn, hard to train, easily distracted. Some show talent, but lack the mental focus to reach their potential. Others are so difficult that trainers give up on them. In racing, temperament matters as much as physical ability. A talented horse with a bad attitude will lose to a less talented horse with a great work ethic. Trainers start quietly complaining about Fusaichi Pegasus foals. They're beautiful, sure, but they're nightmares to work with. Word spreads through the tight-knit racing community. By 2005, after his first crops of foals have started racing, the results are clear. No superstars, no Derby winners, no champions. Just a bunch of moderately talented horses with frustrating personalities. Coolmore realizes they have a problem. In 2006, they drop his stud fee to $150,000. It's a significant decrease, but they hope it will attract more breeders. Maybe with a larger pool of mares, they'll produce a champion through sheer volume. But the pattern continues. His offspring continue to disappoint. Some win minor races, a few win stakes races, but none reach the elite level. None justify their father's $70 million price tag. By 2008, his stud fee drops to $100,000. By 2010, $75,000. The decline is steady and undeniable. By 2015, Fusaichi Pegasus's stud fee has dropped to $50,000. That's a 75% decrease from his peak of $200,000. But Coolmore keeps trying. They keep breeding him to mares, hoping that one magical foal will reverse his fortunes. It never happens. His offspring continue to be mediocre. Some racing analysts start calling him a bust as a sire. Online forums debate what went wrong. Was it his temperament? Was it genetic incompatibility with certain mare families? Was it just bad luck? Nobody knows for sure. What everyone knows is that $70 million is looking like a catastrophic overpayment. In 2018, his stud fee drops to $25,000. Think about that. From $200,000 to $25,000 in less than 20 years. An 87.5% collapse. Mare owners can now breed to a Kentucky Derby winner for less than the cost of a decent used car. It's shocking. It's sad. It's a brutal reminder that pedigree and racing success don't automatically translate to breeding success. By 2020, his final breeding season before retirement, Fusaichi Pegasus stands for $7,500. $7,500. Not $7 million, not $700,000. $7,500. He is officially the cheapest stallion at Ashford Stud, Coolmore's Kentucky facility. Horses with far less accomplished racing careers are charging higher fees. It's a humiliating end to what was supposed to be a dynasty. A 99.6% decrease from his $200,000 peak stud fee. The worst value collapse in breeding history. Let's do the financial autopsy. Coolmore paid $70 million for Fusaichi Pegasus in 2000. Over the next 20 years, they bred him to approximately 100 mares per year on average. His stud fee started at $200,000 and declined steadily. A conservative estimate of his total earnings over 20 years is approximately $30 to $40 million. Let's be generous and say $40 million. Coolmore invested $70 million and got back $40 million. They lost $30 million. That's a 42.8% loss on investment. And that doesn't include the costs of maintaining him for 20 years. Veterinary care, staff, facilities, insurance. Factor in those costs, and the loss is closer to $40 to $50 million. It is, without question, one of the worst investments in sports history. Not just horse racing, all of sports. Imagine buying a sports franchise for $70 million and watching it lose money every single year for 2 decades. That's what happened to Coolmore with Fusaichi Pegasus. So what went wrong? How does a Kentucky Derby winner become worth $7,500? The answer is complicated, but it breaks down into several factors. First, temperament. Fusaichi Pegasus had a difficult personality. He was stubborn, curious, easily distracted. Those traits made him hard to train, and crucially, he passed those traits to his offspring. In horse breeding, temperament is heritable. If the father has a bad attitude, there's a good chance his babies will too. Trainers quickly learned that Fusaichi Pegasus foals were more trouble than they were worth. Second, genetic incompatibility. Sometimes, even champion horses don't click genetically with certain mare families. The resulting foals might look good on paper, but fail to inherit the specific combination of traits that made the father successful. Fusaichi Pegasus seems to have been genetically incompatible with many of the elite mares he was bred to. The resulting foals were just okay, not champions. Third, the breeding market is ruthless. If a stallion doesn't produce champions in his first few crops, breeders abandon him quickly. There are hundreds of stallions to choose from. Why waste money on one whose babies are disappointing? Once Fusaichi Pegasus's first foals failed to produce stars, his reputation was damaged. And in breeding, reputation is everything. Mare owners want proven sires. They want stallions whose offspring are winning Grade 1 races, earning millions of dollars, and becoming breeding prospects themselves. Fusaichi Pegasus couldn't deliver that. Fourth, bad timing. Coolmore bought him right after his Preakness loss, when his value had already dropped. They paid $70 million for a horse whose market value was probably closer to $50 million. They overpaid by $20 million or more right from the start. Then, when his breeding career failed, they had no margin for error. If they'd paid $40 million, the loss would still hurt, but wouldn't be catastrophic. At $70 million, it became a disaster. Fifth, the myth of genetic determinism. People assume that champions automatically produce champions. That's not how genetics works. Talent is influenced by thousands of genes interacting in complex ways. Sometimes, the perfect storm of genes that created Secretariat or Man o' War or Fusaichi Pegasus doesn't transfer to the offspring. The babies might get some of the good genes and some of the bad genes, or they might get all the physical genes, but none of the mental genes. Genetics is a lottery, not a guarantee. And finally, luck. Sometimes things just don't work out. Fusaichi Pegasus might have been unlucky. Maybe if he'd been bred to different mares, the results would have been better. Maybe if his first foals had stayed healthy and avoided injuries, they'd have achieved more. Maybe if a few races had gone differently, one of his offspring would have won a big race and salvaged his reputation. But that's not what happened. The luck ran out. And $70 million evaporated. Behind these numbers are people. Real people who made decisions, took risks, and lived with consequences. Let's talk about Fusao Sekiguchi first. The Japanese businessman who bought Fusaichi Pegasus for $4 million and sold him for $70 million. On paper, he's a genius. He made $66 million profit in less than 2 years. He should be celebrating. But those who knew him say he lived with regret. He sold his Derby champion. He sold his dream. He took the money instead of chasing glory. And for the rest of his life, he wondered, what if I'd kept racing him? What if he'd won the Belmont? What if I'd held on to him and bred him myself? Would the results have been different? We'll never know. But the what if haunted him. Now let's talk about Coolmore, the executives who authorized the $70 million purchase. These aren't amateurs. They're some of the smartest horse people in the world. They've made billions from breeding champions. But they made a mistake with Fusaichi Pegasus. They overpaid. They overestimated his breeding potential. They got caught up in the hype, and they paid the price. $30 to $50 million down the drain. For a company as large as Coolmore, it's survivable, but it's still embarrassing. It's still a stain on their record, and it taught them a hard lesson about due diligence and emotional decision-making. And then there are the mare owners. The people who paid six-figure fees to breed their expensive mares to Fusaichi Pegasus, hoping to produce a champion. Many of them lost money too. They paid $200,000 for a breeding, and the resulting foal was worth 50,000, or they paid 100,000 for a breeding and the foal never won a race. These are regular people, not billionaires. For many of them, breeding to a Derby winner was a once-in-a-lifetime investment, and it failed. Dreams were crushed. Savings were lost. Retirements were delayed. The human cost of this financial disaster extends beyond the headlines. It's a reminder that behind every number is a person who believed, who hoped, who risked everything on a dream. And sometimes, dreams collapse. On May 23rd, 2023, Fusaichi Pegasus was euthanized at age 26. Old age had caught up with him. He'd been retired from breeding 3 years earlier. His final years were quiet, peaceful. He spent his days in a paddock at Ashford Stud, grazing, resting, occasionally visited by fans who remembered his Derby glory. The racing world mourned his passing, not because he'd been a great sire, but because he'd been a champion. Because he'd given us one perfect afternoon in May 2000 when he thundered down the Churchill Downs stretch and into history. His legacy is complicated. He's remembered as the most expensive horse ever sold. That record still stands. No horse has been purchased for more than $70 million. He's also remembered as a Derby winner. That victory is forever. Nobody can take it away. But he's also remembered as one of the biggest breeding disappointments in modern racing history. A cautionary tale about overpaying for potential. A reminder that past performance doesn't guarantee future results. So what's the lesson? What do we take from this wild financial rollercoaster? First, beware of hype. Fusaichi Pegasus was hyped beyond reason. The media loved the story. The racing world got caught up in the excitement. And Coolmore paid the price. When everyone's saying something is a sure thing, it probably isn't. Second, temperament matters. In horses, in people, in any endeavor. Talent without character is a ticking time bomb. Fusaichi Pegasus had all the physical tools but lacked the mental consistency. His offspring inherited that flaw. Third, genetics is not destiny. Just because someone's parent was great doesn't mean they'll be great. This applies to horses and humans. We all know talented people whose children don't inherit that talent. It's life. Fourth, past performance really doesn't guarantee future results. That's not just a financial disclaimer, it's truth. Fusaichi Pegasus winning the Derby didn't mean his babies would win the Derby. Success in one generation doesn't automatically transfer to the next. Fifth, sometimes the best decision is to walk away. Sekiguchi sold for 70 million and made a fortune. He could have kept racing, chased the Triple Crown, risked injury and failure. He chose the safe option. Was it the right choice? Financially, yes. Emotionally, maybe not. But he walked away a winner. That takes courage. And finally, value is subjective and temporary. Fusaichi Pegasus was worth $70 million for about 5 minutes. Then reality set in. His true value, his lasting value, was probably closer to 20 or 30 million. The rest was speculation, hype, and hope. In investments, in relationships, in life, we often confuse temporary inflated value with real sustainable worth. The crash is inevitable. From $4 million to $70 million to $7,500. The wildest value rollercoaster in sports history. A Kentucky Derby champion who became a breeding disappointment. A Japanese businessman who achieved his dream and then sold it. A breeding empire that lost $40 million on a single horse. This story has it all. Ambition, triumph, greed, failure, regret, and ultimately, a hard lesson about the unpredictability of genetics and the danger of overpaying for potential. Fusaichi Pegasus didn't set out to be a cautionary tale. He was just a horse. A talented, difficult, beautiful horse who won the biggest race in America and then failed to pass that magic to his children. He couldn't help that. He didn't choose his temperament. He didn't choose to disappoint. He just lived his life, did what horses do, and became a symbol of something bigger than himself. 25 years have passed since that glorious Derby afternoon. The racing world has moved on. New champions have emerged. New records have been set. But Fusaichi Pegasus remains unique. The most expensive horse ever sold. The biggest breeding bust in modern history. The living proof that you can't predict the future, no matter how much money you spend trying. His story isn't really about a horse. It's about us. About human ambition and human folly. About our desperate need to believe that success is repeatable, that greatness is transferable, that if we just pay enough money, we can guarantee the outcome we want. But life doesn't work that way. Genetics doesn't work that way. Horses don't work that way. Sometimes you pay $70 million and get $7,500 in return. Sometimes the investment fails spectacularly. Sometimes the dream collapses. And all you can do is learn from it, accept it, and move on. Fusaichi Pegasus died peacefully in 2023. His Derby victory remains forever. His breeding failure remains forever. Both are true, both matter, and together they tell us everything we need to know about risk, reward, and the brutal honesty of results. The rollercoaster has ended. The numbers don't lie. And the lesson, expensive as it was, stands eternal. Never confuse a moment of glory with a lifetime of value, because sometimes glory is all you get, and sometimes that has to be enough.